Welcome back, my fellow Calcio lovers, to another episode of Calcio Culture. This is your host, Vos. I got both my co-hosts on the line as well with Mott's and Logs. On today's episode, we're going to be kicking off our summer transfer series. We're going to be discussing Napoli's transfer window, who have been a little bit more active than the rest of the league. Before we get into that, we do have kind of a special announcement from Logs.
Kind of. I mean, this is huge. A huge mile mark in the Calcio Culture, I would guess, storyline. As we grow together, Paisans, we grow together, we take this ride in this Calcio world. We are now 1 year and 2 days out from our inaugural episode, July 17th, 2024. We came to you live for the very first time, and here we are 367 days later, kicking off Season 2 Calcio Culture, Serie A coverage, the best pod in all the lands. We thank you for taking this ride with us. We appreciate all the support. We've been growing every which way, social media, Spotify, Apple Pods. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for interacting. Thank you for taking this ride with us. We're incredibly excited to take on this next season with you all.
Mott's
Logan
said
said
out of you.
No, that Logan said that was great, but excited to take a deeper dive into Napoli's transfer business this season so far.
Yeah, definitely. Napoli have really been the ones driving this entire market from a Serie A perspective, and that's why we thought it made sense to start with them. Defending Scudetto champions, a really convincing Scudetto season coming into this next year, a little bit different of an objective. They now have a couple more competitions, that is namely the Champions League. So a different kind of puzzle for Antonio Conte in this next season. He had some promises from the owner and De Laurentiis that they were going to spend the money, and it seems they have done just that, particularly in building out the squad, maybe adding some better players than what they already have. So I think they're taking the bull by the horns, and they're going after Scudetto again, and they're going to see if they can do some damage in the Champions League. And it's going to be interesting from an Antonio Conte perspective. But then from a player perspective, it's also different. It's not one game a week. There's going to be more rotation. And really their marquee signing, free transfer, I think this took the world by storm when it happened, is Kevin De Bruyne. And that's definitely where we need to start, because he immediately becomes probably one of the best 10 players in the league. He's been one of the best players in the world for the last 10 years. So it's a really exciting piece to add to this team. But I think there are questions around how is he going to fit in the midfield? When is he going to be used? How are they going to play with him in the midfield? So I'll just start with that. And I know, Lugs, you're a big fan of De Bruyne, so this should be interesting. I know we're excited to see him in the league, but how do you feel about this transfer?
Yeah, I think just going back on Napoli as a whole, certainly a whole different objective this season. Conte got a lot of promises, like you said, from the ownership, and they were able to come to terms after a rocky start right after the Scudetto. Conte fully in on this project here, starting off incredibly hot with KDB. This is a huge, huge signing, not only for Napoli themselves, but I think for the brand in general. Not so much getting a player in his exact prime, but he's still got a lot of gas in the tank. And looking at their past, at least last season's transfer pattern, this fits right in with what worked for them last season. You look at bringing in Scott McTominay. You look at bringing in Billy Gilmore. So the real question is the midfield too loaded now? Is it going to screw up the chemistry that they finally found in that last third of the season that really brought them to glory? And I don't think so. I think he fits in perfectly. I think he's coming in to be a team player. He's certainly not going to be their starlet, their number one guy. But I think on certain game days, and certainly with 3 competitions now, he will have to take over some games here and there. So given his tenure, given his experience, given his leadership, taking that talent, that play style from Man City that we've seen be so dominant over the last decade, I think is going to be a huge value add, and especially to some of these younger guys. There's a lot of names that have come into other teams, a lot of other very experienced players with a lot of talent in the past years coming into Serie A. So I think that if anything else, he's going to be a mentor, a teacher, a player manager on the field, which I think is going to be huge, especially with the volume of games they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this guy had his fair amount of suitors. He could have picked wherever he wanted to go. Could have went to the Saudi Pro League, made a lot of money. He could have went to the MLS, made a lot of money. And there were teams in the top 5 European leagues that wanted this guy because he's still got football left to give. And that's exactly what his mindset was. And that's exactly what he felt, is that he still has a lot left in the tank to give. And that's one of the reasons why he was so interested and ended up signing to Napoli. It's huge for the league just because of the profile of the player that he is. He sees things on the pitch that other people do not see. some of his passing that is going to be doing in game is going to amaze some people if you haven't seen him, if you haven't watched him dominate for Manchester City over the last 7 or 8 years, is he has a running mate which he's already has a lot of chemistry with and did play a factor in him choosing Napoli, and that is Lukaku. They have great chemistry on the national team. Obviously, Belgium hasn't been able to maybe do what everyone would have liked them to do in their quote-unquote golden age, but that's not of a lack because of Kevin De Bruyne. He is going to be he's the best player on the pitch almost every single time he steps on the pitch. And in terms of him fitting in, he had an absolutely loaded roster with Manchester City, and he fit in every single time. So yes, there are a lot of mouths to feed in the midfield now. I think that is a luxury problem for Antonio Conte, but he has feel, he has IQ, he's got it all in his locker, which he'll have no problem fitting into this team, this league, and making his marks immediately.
I also think that another intangible here that KDB brings in, and we talk about this a lot when we talk about transfers, and that getting your business done early is incredibly important for any team. The fact that he made his decision prior to the Club World Cup, very, very few days after the season ending, just goes to show that Napoli continues to be a destination for other players, continues to be a project that players want to be involved in, and that this was not just a flash performance winning the Scudetto this season. This is a long-term project. This is a destination for players to come. This is an organization that players will want to be a part of, whether you're growing your game, coming into the prime, coming off the end of your career. This is going to help the rest of their window, certainly knowing that they've got guys like a Kevin De Bruyne coming in and wanting to build on this project, build on the momentum that they had from last season.
Yeah, and I think you guys covered that for the most part. Two things that I really like about this is, number one, when they lost Kvaratskhelia, a lot of what we talked about was everything that he did so well. He was a goal scorer. He was a playmaker as well. And I don't think they ever actually replaced that playmaking kind of guy who can create that incisive pass that creates the goal. So I think this is the player that you then add to do that. And I think he's going to help in those games where they couldn't get a goal, where they did have some draws against some lower level teams. Kevin De Bruyne's the guy that's going to understand what's happening, put himself in the right place to then create that pass for whether it be Lukaku, some other players they just brought in to generate more goals. And then number two, one thing that we always talk about is been there, done that kind of guys. This whole team now has been there, done that in the league. Now they're going into the Champions League, and most of them have not had tremendous amount of experience there. And you bring in Kevin De Bruyne, Champions League finalist 2 times, Champions League winner once, has been in the competition numerous times. So it adds that extra level of comfort in that competition. One question that I do still think is relevant for both of you guys. I'm curious of what you think when he will be used. Do you think he'll be a starter every league game? Do you think he's going to kind of get picked by Conte to be in certain games? Because again, he is kind of at the end of his career. We know that Conte does like to play that high intensity style that De Bruyne really hasn't been a part of something like that in the past. So just curious to get your thoughts there. Because again, this is a different puzzle this year.
Yeah. So Antonio Conte actually said in an interview pretty recently that he's kind of done with this whole mindset of you have starters and you have rotational players. He said, we're going to have a lot of competitions. Some players are going to start some games. Some players are going to start the other games. We have 22 starters on this team, and we're going to be rotating them throughout because we need them all to play in every game or sub on in every game in order to make an impact. And I really, really agreed with that statement. I think that's a great way of looking at it. I think this past year, and including with this statement going into this year, Conte has really changed his mindset, because the past Conte would roll out the same 11 for the most part. So I think he's really going to be flexible with De Bruyne, and that's a luxury that Conte can have. He can play De Bruyne probably from the start in the Champions League games. He's got much more experience there, and then use him as a Swiss Army knife, kind of change the momentum of a Serie A game that they need to go get a win on in the 60th minute earlier. Manchester City obviously had a plenty of guys to go to, and Pep would use De Bruyne like that a lot. And a lot of times it would be very successful because of De Bruyne's reading of the game and how he can impact it. So I think for the most part, in the large games, like your clashes against your Milans and your Juventuses and your Inters, you're going to see De Bruyne from the start, along with the Champions League game. And then in maybe potentially the lower level games, you're going to see him coming on in that 60th minute to deliver the final ball or score the goal to deliver 3 points to Napoli. But I really like the way Conte approached the question that was asked to him and how he thinks I have more than 11 starters on this team.
My take here is I want to hedge how excited I am about KDB coming because, of course, he's a name brand and he's been there, done that. And we know he's a talent. I do have two concerns. Number one, game management with KDB is going to be incredibly important just given his injury history. We know that he hasn't been able to play full seasons back to back all the time. So game management, especially through competitions, is going to be a huge thing. And we know that Conte can tend to get into a rut with what Matt said, the same 11 players. My other concern is that we saw last year with Napoli, what worked was that everyone had defined responsibilities and defined places on the field. With De Bruyne, you're going to see that he can play in multiple parts of the pitch. So it'll be interesting to see how the other two men in the midfield, whether it be Zambo and McTominay, whether it be Gilmore and Lucca, how they're able to adjust to where KDB is on the field. Because De Bruyne can drop into the back line and facilitate the move forward. He can play as a second striker and play that final ball. So depending on how the game flow is going, he's going to pick his spots. I want to see how well the other two are able to adapt in real time wherever KDB ends up being on the field. But again, I think aside from the injuries, that flexibility that he's bringing is going to be a huge positive.
Yeah, and beyond that free transfer, which was a phenomenal signing, they have spent $43 million. So there's clearly other players to talk about. And probably that the most important signing and kind of I would call this like a no nonsense, just a logical move, was the signing of Sam, I'm going to butcher his name, Beukema from Bologna, who was Bologna's right center back. I think it was around 25 million, 30 million.
It was definitely a good deal.
Yeah, I think it was 30 mil around there. That sounds about right.
So last year, he was Bologna's right center back, 33 starts, 35 appearances, was widely regarded as one of the best defenders in the league. And this is really just another one strengthening the team. They already had the best defense in the league. If not, they had the second best defense in Europe last year. And you're just improving that. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And this is clearly a sign of that. I think what this does add is a better range of players if Conte does want to go to a back three. Because I think day one, the two best center backs are Buongiorno, who's a lefty, is going to be playing on the left side, and Beukema, who's a righty, going to be playing on the right side. But it kind of pushes, oh God, I'm spacing out on his name. Rahmani. It kind of pushes Rahmani, I think, a little bit out of the team, even though we thought he was one of the best defenders in the league last year. But it does put you in a place, if you want to play a back three, you probably have the best defense in the league.
Well, this signing was actually amazing because it shows that change of mindset coming from Napoli because they didn't have a need at center back. Their center back pairing was phenomenal. Even when Buongiorno was injured, they were still very, very strong back there. So to go out and bolster one of your strongest points on the field, I think is a very clear change in mindset. More games they're going to need to rotate. So I think that there's plenty of playing time to go around for these three guys. And I don't think that that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, this was a great signing for them. This is one of the best ball playing defenders in terms of on the ball in the league. And they have another one in Buongiorno. Obviously, Buongiorno last season had some injury issues. But what this is going to allow Conte to do is just have way more flexibility. Last season, their third center back was Juan Jesus, right? Like now your third center back is Rahmani or Sam. So you have a lot of flexibility here. And it's just adding to the best defense in the league over the top 5 European leagues. So this is a great add. This was a bargain buy. I thought that he could have went for a lot more. He wanted Napoli at the end of the day, which is obviously good. So good business by Napoli. This is a player to watch for Napoli this coming season.
I do think that we need, as Vo said, they've made a ton of business already. We do need to move to the front line because as we know, last winter window, they lose Kvaratskhelia. They don't really replace him from a talent perspective. They were kind of filling in holes. It ended up working out. Lukaku was showing through, but I do think that they made a couple of moves here that continue to fill in that hole that Kvaratskhelia has lost. And I want to point to Noah Lang, who is now an official signing from PSV. I believe they spent about $25 million to bring him in. Noah Lang has been a prospect of Serie A for a couple of seasons now. Certainly a tricky winger. He's going to play off the left. He's going to play very direct. I don't know if that he's so much a ball-playing winger, but he's certainly going to get forward. He's going to get behind the back line. He's good on the ball. He's good 1v1. So I think between the fact that they bring in KDB to play those final balls and they bring in Noah Lang, who's direct and very tricky, very skillful, I think they're finally filling in that hole. It may not be in one player, but they're finally filling in that hole that Kvara has now taken away from them. And I think he's going to be a nice accent up top that they tried to do with David Neres and they tried to do with Politano.
Yeah, my concern with this one is I think Ndoye is a good player. Last year, 21 goal contributions, 11 goals, 10 assists in the Eredivisie, which is that's a great tally from any winger. I'm not going to disagree with that. My concern is that I don't think he's much better than David Neres. I think David Neres' problem last year was staying healthy, but I thought he was very effective in the games that he did play. And for me, in replacing Kvaratskhelia, improving that front line, I've always felt they need to go one step further and sign that kind of elite level player. And I'm not sure Noah Lang is that guy, because with this team, where did they rely on players to get goals? It was Lukaku and it was Scott McTominay. And I'm not sure that Scott McTominay goal output can be replicated this coming season. So you need to add goals elsewhere. And I don't think Politano is that guy. He's never really been that guy. And I'm not sure that David Neres, Noah Lang are going to be that guy. What I do like about it is you have more competitions. This is a guy that can play in any game you need him to, because he's a high-level player. But just for me, again, question marks about where you're going. Is this elevating you to that next level? I'm not 100% sure.
I think that the elite level, losing a Kvara, they didn't replace him in the winter. Trying to get somebody better than Kvara is very hard to do, because Kvara is one of the best players in the world. And now that he's on PSG, everyone's finally realizing it, even though he's been doing that for the last 2 seasons for Napoli. They got their elite guy in De Bruyne, right? They don't need to go get another elite winger. I think this Noah Lang buy is a fantastic buy. They finally did, at least at the bare minimum, replace Kvara with a true left winger who has proven he can get goals and get assists. He had a great game against Juventus in the Champions League. And he's also got, in my opinion, the Napoli kind of swag that they have. He reminds me a lot of Insigne and Lavezzi when they were on Napoli. So I really, really like this buy. I think he's a creative player. He's going to want to take on his man. He can play a lot of different positions. This allows them to be flexible, and it is actually finally going out and replacing Kvara. Sure, he's not as good as Kvara, but I think they brought in a player at Kvara's class in a different position in De Bruyne. So they were just rebolstering that left wing that Kvara left, that hole that he left behind. I love the signing by Napoli.
And in terms of talent level here, the way that he's progressed through the European leagues, I think is incredibly well done. And the fact that he's now 26, coming to a top flight league, trying to prove himself as he's gotten better every single season. Again, starting at Club Brugge, then going to the Eredivisie, slowly but surely always improving year over year, coming into a prime now, coming under Conte, with a lot of talent, a lot of experience around him. I think he's going to be able to absorb that and take it to the next level here, especially given the stage that he's going to be on, the bright lights, the opportunity set that he's faced with. I think he'll step into it quite nicely.
One last thing I'll say on Noah Lang very quick is that game against Juventus, when I was watching, I kept saying, this guy's going to make a move somewhere, because every time he got the ball, he wanted to take his man on. He ended up beating his man a lot of times. He played a large factor in a goal that they scored that game. And I just kept thinking to myself, this guy's going to make a big move soon in his career, because he's ready for that step.
How many nightmares have you had about Noah Lang since that game?
He was good, but it wasn't like...
Yeah, the last official signing here that we want to mention and talk about a little bit is 24-year-old Italian Lorenzo Lucca, who's on a loan with an obligation to buy, with that rising to 35 million euros, I believe it was, from Udinese. Last year, 12 goals, 1 assist. The most notable part about this guy is he is gigantic. I think he's like 6'6". He's enormous.
Massive.
And that's his number one, right? Aerial ability has always been his number one trait. Me personally, talking about him last year, I've always had questions about what is his ceiling, and is he kind of an elite player? 35 million is a lot of money to spend on a striker. We saw AC Milan do that in the winter, and Santi Jimenez didn't quite go well so far. There might be some room for improvement. This is just an interesting signing for me, because that's a lot of money to spend on somebody that's presumably your number 2 striker this coming season. But again, a guy with Serie A experience, 12 goals in the league is a good goal tally for anyone. So what do you guys think about this one? Where do you see him fitting in the team?
I think his output's going to be relatively the same as he had last year, even as a second striker, even following in behind Lukaku as his lieutenant. I think that bringing in a mid-tier talent here to be the backup from the same league is really important.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of room to grow. He's still rather raw. I'd chalk him up to kind of the same stage that Dovbyk was in last year. I say that a lot about a lot of strikers these days, but I do think that Dovbyk.
Hang on. When Dovbyk got bought, he was the Golden Boot winner in La Liga. So
I'm saying in the same talent level that Dovbyk showed last year, at Roma, I think that Luca's at the same stage and needs to improve immensely. I'm not saying that he doesn't need to be better. I think that he's clearly, his best trait is that he's gigantic and a target man and can get in the box, and you have to put a defender on him. You can't just let him be. He's going to be dangerous. But in terms of what he's going to do for build-up, that's a huge hole in this game that they're going to need to work around. But in any case, I don't think that anybody's going to sit here and say that bringing on Lorenzo Lucca is a step down from bringing on Gio Simeone when you need a goal.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so interesting signing. Obviously, this is a player that was linked with Juventus for a while every summer, it seemed like, and I would always pray that Juventus do not sign him because I do think 30 million is a lot. Napoli did a good job in kind of kicking that money down the line, right? They're only paying 9 million to loan him this season with an obligation for next season to buy him. But what I will say about this signing is that Antonio Conte has very famously said multiple times, you can get your wife wrong, but you cannot get your goalkeeper and your striker wrong. He's definitely got his fingerprints all over this signing. He sees something in him that he thinks he can get the best out of. He has done it before with Lukaku. We've seen Conte or Lukaku go elsewhere and stink. He comes back to Conte and he's good again. Another thing I will say is Napoli scored a ton of goals with crosses in the box, having Scott McTominay and Zombo. This is another large body in the box. You have Kevin De Bruyne, who can deliver the most delicious ball in the world from the right-hand side.
Absolute peach.
Not comparing this man, Lorenzo Lucca, to this guy, but he has a very similar build to Erling Haaland and is very similar, poor in the setup play, but very good at running on balls that De Bruyne can deliver, getting on the end of balls that De Bruyne can deliver, so on and so forth. So once again, not comparing them, similar builds though, and similar, like, I'm just going to smash the ball in the net at the end of the day when you guys did all the hard stuff. So I think he has room to grow. I think Conte sees something in him. He's hoping to get stuff out of him. So it's a great addition. We've now kind of talked about almost all of the business that Napoli has done, and you'll notice they've gotten 2 people up top. They've gotten a midfielder. They've gotten multiple defenders. So they are bolstering every single line. And there are a couple more people that they're rumored to that we're about to cover. That's just going to show that they're bolstering even more than just their outfield players as well. So just really overall great transfer window so far for Napoli.
Yeah, and to wrap on Lucca, I agree that there's question marks about how good he actually is. But regardless, I'm having nightmares of Lorenzo Lucca and Kevin De Bruyne coming on in like the 70th minute, and De Bruyne just slinging crosses into the box, 6'7" guy, like actually unmarkable. That's a problem. They're going to be a problem on set pieces when you include Buongiorno in there and Lukaku in there and
Zombo,
McTominay.
Yeah,
like that is
a tall team.
So I think regardless, they'll get something out of him, and he's going to be an issue to deal with. Just kind of wrap out the other business that they did do. They signed Luca Marianucci from Empoli for $9 million, another defender. So like Mont said, a couple more guys strengthening that back line. And then there was 2 rumors that we did want to cover quickly because it seems like these might have legs. The first one is Vanja Milinković-Savić from Torino, who is their goalkeeper. It's looking like they're looking at a fee around 30 million. I question whether this needs to get done, although Vanja is a great player. He was Logs and I's goalkeeper of the season last year.
Best goalkeeper in Serie A. Why wouldn't you bring him in?
But at the same time, I think we were all in agreement, and I don't think anybody can disagree that Alex Moret had a great season last year. So it's kind of a question mark. Is this the right place to be putting that money? What do you guys think?
I don't know if it's the right place. They've definitely done enough business where they can start looking at those spots where they don't necessarily need 100% help. But I think a lot of it depends on the business that goes out. Most namely, Victor Osimhen is still on the roster, still on their books, and is still linked heavily away, looking to go back to the Turkish league. Not sure what the fee is there, but depending on how that goes, they could have a lot of expendable income where they're like, I mean, we have it. Why don't we spend it to get even marginally better? And I do think that bringing in a player like Vanja would take him to the next level, at least from the back line, because as we've seen, Vanja basically did it by himself last year, and having the best defense in Serie A in front of the best goalkeeper in Serie A, I do not know how you score goals against that team.
Best goalkeeper in the Serie A is a subject of, that's an opinion. I'll just quickly comment on the Osimhen saga that Logs brought up. Looking like it's going to be back to Galatasaray. It's going to be for $75 million. It's just, are they going to load it up front and pay it the first year, or are they going to load a $40 million payment and then 35 in a couple of years down the road? De Laurentiis is playing real hardball with them. He's asking them for bank letters and things like that. He doesn't think they can actually give the cash. But yeah, I mean, if you sell, like, you spent $40 million, if you sell Osimhen for 75, you now have an additional 30 million to play around with. So this is kind of a luxury buy here, but what it would do for them is just absolutely bolster their defense, which is already extremely strong.
Defensive league.
Correct. But who I'm more interested in them buying is going to be the other guy that they're rumored with, and that is Dan Ndoye. I think if they get this done, they would have improved their left wing, their right wing, and their striker, their midfield, and their defense. They would be a scary team. They would have depth at every position. Antonio Conte, who we know what he can do when he has a deep team like this. The Dan Ndoye deal, for me, would be massive for Napoli. And they're already going to be, spoiler alert, my Scudetto favorites. I'm sure they're going to be a lot of people's favorites, not favorites to win the Champions League for me, but I'd be saying quarter to semifinals with the roster that they have and the players that they have, if they bring in both of these players with the depth and the quality at every position.
Before you jump in, just really quick, want to cover. Last year, Dan Ndoye, winger from Bologna, 8 goals, 1 assist, but I think his impact on that team was a lot bigger than even 9 goal contributions. I think he's very much agreed upon, one of the top wingers in the league, and would probably be the best forward on the team as soon as he signed. But kicking back to you, I just want to get that out there.
No, I think that was important. So for the listeners that are coming in for season 2.
4 assists. Sorry, I said 1 assist. I meant 4 assists.
Yeah, you're skipping them out a little bit. But again, for the listeners coming in for season 2 for the first time, Dan Ndoye came to the scene first for Bologna 2 seasons ago under Thiago Motta. Had a very decent season, I would say, but it certainly came to the scene. Had been balling out for Switzerland as well, and certainly had a great season last year under Italiano at Bologna. This man torched the United States men's national team a couple weeks ago. He's still obviously got it on all levels, can play on different stages. I think this is the guy that, Vos, you're looking for in terms of where's the elite buy. This will be an elite buy if they get this business done. He's been in the league. He's been there, done that. This guy is incredibly talented, super team-oriented, not so much a star in his mindset, but can be a star on the field. And again, if they can get him into the rotation of those wingers between Politano, Noah Lang, that to me is a perfect rotation for the amount of games that they have to play. So he would be a beautiful addition to this roster.
Yeah, and the thing for me with this one is you guys might disagree with me. I think he's still undervalued. I mean, 40 million for, I would say, an elite winger is kind of like that. Why wouldn't you just go and just pull the trigger there? I don't think there's any reason not to. When you're talking about 35 million for Lorenzo Lucca, you get 5 million more thrown at that deal, and you get a player that is drastically better than Lucca. So 40 million on a guy that you know is an elite winger in the league that you're playing in. Like, it's such an easy swap. He's going to a better team. You know it's going to work. So why not just pull the trigger on this one? And I agree, Logs, you said it. You took the words out of my mouth. This is the guy that I see as your elite winger. You bring him on, he's miles better than Politano ever was, even. So now you have a guy who's a creator and a goal scorer and is going to play every game. Like, this guy, he doesn't just play games. And we talk about Rafael Leao a lot, and there's some luxury players like that can fade out of games. Dan Ndoye never fades out of games. He does so much off the ball stuff in terms of pressing, getting into good positions, helping his teammates. I don't even know how he's still on Bologna at this point. What is going to be hard with this deal is Bologna don't need to sell him. And it's going to be really up to him whether or not he wants to push himself out of Bologna. And he's not in a bad situation there. That club is still building. We really like them. We've talked about them all last season. They're in a good place to kind of push for that top 4. So I think that's going to be the hard part of getting this deal done.
One doubt you have to have in the back of your mind in this deal, to your point of 40 million, just pull the trigger. It makes a ton of sense on the surface, of course. But we look back to last transfer window, last summer, and Matz's boys going after Nico Gonzalez for who we thought was going to be a surefire, plug and play guy coming off of Fiorentina for about the same fee, went totally south. Nico had a very subpar season, very injury-ridden season. And so you just have to have a little bit of doubt in the back of your mind of, are we pulling trigger on a $40 million guy who, yes, has proven himself in Serie A, but with that transition to a new system, is it going to just directly be the same thing? there's a little bit of doubt, at least for me, in the back of my mind, doing the same thing that we saw last season not work out.
Where I would push back on you on that one, it's because he's been able to carry this form over to the Swiss national team. I would say, okay, he's already done it at 2 different levels. Like, there's no drop off. And I would say he almost raises his level even more when he plays for Switzerland because his star power, they kind of need him to step up. So I just feel more confident about it. Even I was high on the Nico Gonzalez one and got that completely wrong. So that is something you always need to. You always do need to ask the question. But just the way that he plays, this would have been my number 1 on this list of everybody to get done, period.
Yeah, just to quickly wrap up, it's also just his work rate. Like, he's going to at least work hard off the ball. He could play left, he could play right. So he just gives work rate and flexibility at the very least if he's not giving the statistics, which he didn't do in the first year under Mazza. He only had like 1 goal, but he gave the work rate, he gave the attitude, he gave the desire, which is what Conte wants and needs. So he'll give that at the very least. So I like that, and I think that would be a huge add for them.
Yeah, just to wrap here, Mats, you wanted to highlight, there were some outgoings, not all that significant, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there was some players left, like Nathan left for $9 million, but in total, there's about 9 players that Napoli have sold in this window for about $24 million. So right now, they're only at like a net spend of like $19 million, and they haven't sold Osimhen yet. Exactly. So what I'm trying to highlight here is just great business being done all around for Napoli. Transfers out, transfers in. They're probably going to be looking at a profit once they sell Osimhen, depending on how much more they sell. But just a great job by De Laurentiis and the sporting director there in Napoli. 2 years in a row now. They had a great transfer window last year. They're doing it again. They're getting guys of all different levels, whether it be world-class in De Bruyne or slightly newer, and they're going to develop. So great job by Napoli. A very exciting season to come. Looking forward to see what they can do and defending their current champions.
Yeah, and I don't know how Logs didn't mention this. They also released a new kit, and it looks very nice. The away kit with some gold trim on it. I might be buying that one.
The kits in Serie A are great this season. There will be a sole episode of just going over kits from me. Keep an eye out for that. But yes, folks, their second kits here are pristine.
Their first kits are nice too. Napoli's always got nice kits. That baby blue is always nice. De Bruyne also will be wearing the number 11. They gave him the number 10 for practice, which is pretty big because obviously Maradona was at Napoli. But yeah, very nice jerseys. Last shout out I'll say is that parents over in Napoli right now should be my favorite team, but obviously not. They are still the good one.
Shout out the Koozies.
Yeah, but that's it for us, guys. We're going to be back talking more transfers. Like I said, this is kind of our summer transfer series. When things happen, we're going to hop on here. But that was everything about Napoli. We're going to be talking about another team on our next episode. But with that, Logs, where can everybody kind of find us and leave us reviews? We really need that.
Paisans, let us know what you think. Let us know where you think Napoli needs to continue to improve any positions that we haven't covered today. But you know where to find us. You know where to interact with us on all socials, X, Instagram, TikTok, and specifically YouTube. Definitely trying to grow there. Please like, subscribe, comment. And we are on all your podcasting sites, Spotify and Apple Pods. Paisans, it's been a great 365 with you. We're looking forward to the next 365. Calcio Culture is here to stay. Big milestone passed this week. So thank you for coming along for the ride, as I've said. And Mats, take us away.
Forza, or do not be a Gagoots, and Forza Calcio Culture.